Welcome to Stronger Than the Story Real Women, Real Overcoming. I'm Janae Robinson. These conversations are with women who have faced life altering moments and discovered a strength they didn't know they had. Because your story may shape you, but it does not decide what rises next. It's my pleasure today to welcome Michelle Willard. Michelle is a life and relationship coach who specializes in guiding women toward deeper self awareness, emotional growth, and healthier relationships, starting with the one they have with themselves. For years, Michelle prioritized her marriage at the expense of her own needs, slowly losing touch with who she was. But no matter how much she gave, the disconnect in her relationship only grew. In 2016, it all came to a breaking point, leaving her feeling hopeless, alone, and uncertain of how to move forward. Determined to rebuild from the inside out, she embarked on a journey of self discovery, one that not only restored her sense of self, but also breathed in new life to her marriage. Drawing from her background as a high school educator and trauma informed social emotional learning facilitator, Michelle combined her passion for teaching with her own transformational journey to help others break free from unhealthy relationship patterns. Leaving the comfort and security of the classroom, she stepped into her calling as a life coach, launching her own business and creating educational content to support women struggling with the same challenges that she once faced. Through her active social media presence, engaging online courses, and transformative workshops, Michelle empowers women worldwide to break free from patterns that keep them stuck and step into the love and life they deserve. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. So, I wanted to start out with a question. You really spend your life helping other women rebuild their relationships with themselves. And so, I'm curious, in your bio, you talked about the disconnect that was in your marriage where it came to a breaking point. Will you tell us about that moment when you realized that the relationship you had with yourself needed healing?
Yeah. So, my husband and I had a very passionate start to our relationship, and it was passionate on both ends. The love and sex was passionate, but so were the fights, and the fights were emotionally abusive, and and it was now I'm not innocent in that. I want to say that, right? But the verbal and emotional abuse was predominantly from my husband, and I endured that for several years. And the breaking point came when I saw him spewing the same emotional and verbal abuse toward my daughter that he had, you know, that I was subject to all of those years. And it was in that moment where I was witnessing it happen to someone that I loved that I realized how much I had set aside my own needs and my own emotional health for this relationship. And so that was truly a breaking point for me, and actually was the start of an 18-month separation between my husband and myself. And it was just such an eye opener because, like I said, it wasn't until I saw it happening to my daughter that I was like, wait a minute, this is not acceptable. And so, yeah, so that was the beginning of that
Yeah.
journey.
And that really is interesting because that does happen.
Mhm.
All of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute. And so in your coaching, you do guide women to become more self-aware, right? And that's what I
Mhm.
see in this moment is there was the self-awareness of, uh-oh, what's going on. So what do you think that most women are unconsciously avoiding when they refuse to look inward?
Yeah, I think that they're avoiding uncovering parts of themselves that they don't like, and maybe the shame that can accompany that. We don't want to that doesn't sound fun at all. Why would I want to do that, right? Um, but I think that what I teach and what I have found to be true is that Yes, shame does keep us from doing that. And we think that shame, actually, see, we think that shame is going to stop us from repeating those same patterns. A lot of us were parented with shame. And and sometimes maybe we took part in that, in school. Maybe our teachers use shame to guide us. And so we have that tendency to do that to ourselves. And I think that the important key in self discovery and looking inward is to not approach it with shame, but to approach it with compassion. So
Which
I
I think
think
is
that,
beautiful. Mhm.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
but
I just said I think that that's beautiful because that is true. We look at there must be something wrong with me, right? And I didn't mean to cut you off.
no,
So,
that's fine.
yeah, did you want to add more to that?
No, I think that that is just the key. It is the healing component. When we judge ourselves and use shame to try to change ourselves, that's never going to work. That doesn't work in diets, that doesn't work in exercise, it doesn't work. It is truly loving ourselves and having compassion, understanding why we were leaning into some of those unhealthy patterns. Um, and that's, I believe, the key to healing.
Beautiful. So you coach women into healthier relationships, but you say that it starts with the relationship that they have with themselves. What is the hardest truth women have to face when they finally look honestly at the way they have been treating themselves? So when they recognize that shame, when they recognize the records that are beating themselves up, or like I said, there must be something wrong with me.
Mhm.
Um, so tell me about that.
Well, I would venture to say that most women don't see that as treating themselves poorly. And I think that most women just really don't see it. They might say, "Yeah, I probably don't talk to myself the way I should." But I think that a lot of times we not only treat people better than we treat ourselves, but we think that we're teaching other people how to treat us by the way that we're treating them. And really, what I have found is that we're not teaching people how to treat us by the way that we're treating them. We're teaching them by the way they see us treating ourselves. So if we're tolerating the abuse, if we're putting our needs on the back burner, taking care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves, that's not teaching them how to treat us by how we're treating them. That's showing them our needs don't matter. And it's okay to treat me this way.
Right. Yeah, and it takes a lot to recognize that and actually step into the new patterns, right? And nourishing those ways of yourself and recognizing the role that we play in that as well. So
Yeah.
what a beautiful answer to that question. I absolutely love that.
Well,
So I want
I feel like I spent years looking at these other what I would have called high maintenance women. And I'm like, why are those women getting the men that dote all over them? Well, because they're showing those men, hey, I am valuable. Look at how I treat myself. And it just never occurred to me when that finally occurred to me, that was just like such a huge epiphany. I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm teaching him this.
I agree. I ask women all the time, how far are you going to bend? How far are you going to bend and contort to make sure that that other person is more comfortable than you? And so yeah, these other women, they don't bend. It's just, you know, this is who I am, and
Hmm.
they're not being disrespectful. They're not abusing their partners. It's an
No.
understanding.
And they know their worth.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. What a beautiful place to be.
absolutely.
So, you've been walking through a cancer journey while still holding space for other women. So, what has cancer revealed about you that you might never have discovered otherwise? Because you've been through quite a journey with
I
this. I've been
have. I
watching.
have.
Yeah.
Yes. So I believe, and I share this with my clients all the time, that life is happening for us, not to us. And when life happens, we have a choice to either allow it to make us bitter or better. And if we truly believe that life is happening for us, then we can lean into, what is it trying to teach me? How can this make me better? And it's interesting because the day I had my biopsy, I went live on social media and shared that, and I even said that very same thing. I said, and at the time, I thought there was no way that this was going to come back. I thought that the doctors were completely overreacting. This is silly, right? But I was just like, okay, well, I'll just have a little lesson out of this. And then I said, we have a choice. Is this going to make me bitter or better? And I said to the camera, to my following, and I choose, this will make me better. And I love that I have that on video. And I love that I made that promise to myself before I ever even thought that this was truly a possibility. And I really think that these types of health concerns, or when I had a miscarriage years back, I think of both of those in the same light, in that what they have taught me is how to have compassion for other people going through something similar. Um, because if I'm being honest, with both people who had miscarriages, or somebody who had a cancer diagnosis like myself, where I didn't have to go through chemo, I didn't look like a cancer patient, I wouldn't have thought, oh, well, then it's no big deal. It's stage one. It's no big deal. Or a miscarriage. Oh, well, just get pregnant again. And now, like, oh, I'm embarrassed to even say that now. But I feel like both of those circumstances have taught me the pain of those situations, the grief of the loss, all of the mixed emotions that come with it, and how to approach someone who is going through that journey themselves. And that is just such an important lesson for all of us, to understand how to, what to say, what to do when somebody is going through something like that. So I feel like that's how it's made me better.
Yeah, a lot of compassion. I'm hearing just a lot of compassion
Yeah.
on your end, because when they tell us that we don't want to just get to the end, and sometimes that's what we do. We go live and say, "This is how I'm going to do this," but there's a whole journey to get us there, and that live is a great reminder, right? Hey, this is what I said. Am I living that? Am I
Hmm.
doing this? How am I showing up through this? Because there's a lot of hills and valleys that we go through when we are going through these tough journeys.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that I love being a coach, because the very things that I teach my clients, well, I will encounter some of those obstacles myself. And so, okay, what do I teach them? All right, well, that's what I'm going to do. And it holds me accountable.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So when life forces you to confront the seriousness of your health, it strips away a lot of illusions, right? So there's a lot of things that get stripped away. So what illusions about life, success, or relationships have fallen away for you?
Two things come to mind. One is that I didn't really take my health seriously. When my doctor first even suggested that this could be something more serious, my response was, "Oh, don't be silly. Just give me an antibiotic. I'll be fine." So, and he actually did. The first time that I was experiencing pain, he did give me an antibiotic. And the ironic thing is that the pain went away, and I was like, "See, I was right. It's fine. I'm totally fine." But then, 6 months later, when I came back and I said, "Oh, I'm experiencing that same pain. Can you just prescribe an antibiotic again?" And he's like, "No, I can't." So, yeah, so that's the one thing, is that I realized, it is possible to have some serious health concerns even though I am healthy. otherwise. So that was one of the things. And the other thing I think is that, when you go through something difficult, they say, you know who your true friends are, right? Um, but, and while I did have some disappointment in terms of, sometimes I would have strangers reach out to me, but not friends. And while it's easy to get caught up in the hurt of that, I think that what this has shown me is that, news like this is uncomfortable, whether you're the person experiencing it or a friend or family member hearing about it. And it's very similar to, painful emotions. It doesn't have to be a cancer diagnosis, but if you are experiencing a painful emotion and a friend sees you crying, they might not know what to say. They might not say anything. They might offer you advice. They might throw scripture at you. They might take the opportunity to tell you about when they were crying, right? And none of those help. So whether it's some emotional trauma like that, or a diagnosis, a health diagnosis like this, I think that what this has shown me is that it's uncomfortable for people, and they are doing their best with what they think will help. And I can show them grace for that. But I'm so thankful to have gone through this journey. And like I said, now I know that sometimes those words aren't helpful at all. Sometimes they're bypassing what I'm experiencing, like kind of bulldozing past our emotions. And that does not help us to feel seen. That does not help us heal. And so really what I've learned and what I've seen is that it's not in the words that we say or what we do. It's really in our presence and in being there with someone. You don't have to bring them flowers. In fact, please don't bring me flowers after surgery, because that's one more thing I have to keep alive. And I learned that, like it's things like that. People have the best intentions, but we don't, until you've gone through something like this, you don't realize what is truly helpful.
Well, and I really appreciate the fact that you brought up the word uncomfortable, because you're not here just to coach people who have gone through a cancer journey. You're here to coach people who may never have a cancer journey.
Exactly.
But when you are uncovering those patterns, they're gonna feel uncomfortable, right? So to have that, really that firsthand experience of this uncomfortable and what it has brought into your life just through this journey, um, it can really help them as well, just to say, hey, people, when you start to change, other people are going to be uncomfortable. It's just a
hmm
fact. They're
Yeah,
going to be uncomfortable. And the ones that you think are going to come alongside you, they're not always the ones. And then the
exactly.
ones that do, sometimes it surprises, I know sometimes,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like, oh, I had no idea that they would be the one. Like, and it's so interesting. So I really appreciate you bringing up that word uncomfortable, because any journey that we go through, we're going to feel uncomfortable.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that it has helped me as a coach, not necessarily the cancer diagnosis. I mean, it can't hurt, I don't think, because that too is uncomfortable. But I've been through a lot of uncomfortable experiences in relationships, and so guiding women through that and knowing, having them know that I've been in their shoes is comforting. When my husband and I were separated for that 18 months, we went to a Christian counselor who was a fantastic man and had a picture perfect marriage. But my husband and I weren't on our first marriage, and we were separated, and we, had this blended family, and there was, verbal and emotional abuse and all of these things that he couldn't relate with. And oftentimes we would leave those sessions almost feeling dirty, like he doesn't get it. He can't relate. And so, while there's so many parts of my story that I wish were not my story, I'm so grateful that they are, because now who better to help somebody else going through a part of their story that they wished was not part of their story, when they can go, oh, Michelle has been there. This has been a part of her story.
It's a true unraveling. It is a true
Absolutely.
unraveling. And oftentimes, I think that we're told, if you're in an abusive relationship, just get out. And we forget to look at the willingness of the other partner. What is it that they're willing to go through? I mean, and I'm not saying that your safety doesn't matter, because if you don't have safety, you're not going to be able to get up into communication, let alone solve a problem.
Right.
And so to be able to look at the willingness of both parties, and when you go to counseling, how important it is to really take those masks off. My husband and I, we were said, oh no, you're fine. Go ahead and just leave. You guys are great. But we were wearing masks the whole time. Neither of us were telling the truth as far as what was really going on in the relationship. And
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's very, very interesting with that.
Yeah.
So the next question I wanted to ask you is, when a woman does receive a diagnosis like cancer, the world immediately labels her as a fighter, but behind the label is still a human being. So, who has Michelle had to become in the season that the world doesn't see, that you don't put on social media?
So, I have definitely shown a human side on social media, and I have tried to show up in those difficult moments. In fact, just a month ago, I had my second scan since my 10-hour surgery back in July. And going into that scan, I went live to share the anxiety that I was facing and how difficult it was, and something that I had never anticipated. I never thought about how that would bring about anxiety. I never had health related anxiety before. When I went in for my scan prior to the diagnosis, I was in there like, this is silly, right? Like I had no worries in the world. Go ahead, yeah, do the scan, it'll be fine. And now I go into those scans very differently, because I realize what's at stake. My oncologist has been very clear that if it comes back, I won't be as lucky. They were able to, save my facial nerve. So your facial nerve, just to give you a little bit of background. So it was parotid gland cancer. Parotid gland is your salivary gland. And I had a tumor there that was resting against my facial nerve. And that facial nerve controls everything on the right side of your face, the ability to open and close your eye, the ability to smile. This would completely droop if I did not have that facial nerve. So the reality, first of all, of how lucky I am, I have one thing that I have not talked about a lot is the survivor's guilt
Yes.
that accompanies this. I had a very aggressive form of cancer, um, that could have been so much worse had we found it, even a month later. It was resting against that nerve when I underwent that surgery. A month later, it could have been wrapped around that nerve. In fact, there's a woman that I started following online who was diagnosed with pretty much the same thing 2 months before me. And despite having the surgery and the radiation, um, when she went back for her scan, it was in her lungs, and then it went to her brain. And so, yeah, the survivor's guilt, the fact that um, To be honest, sometimes it makes me uncomfortable to even talk about my cancer journey because I don't feel like it was hard enough.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think that would be the thing that people don't see is that I really struggle with that part of it. And it's going to be a reality for me, for years to come. I will be having quarterly scans for the next 5 years. And then I'm told that when those are over, that then there's another level of anxiety because then there's the unknown. At least every quarter I know. And then when they take those away, then it's just the unknown. If I feel a pain, is there, what's going on? So yeah, I would say that while I've been very transparent online, I have not, I don't think I've spoken at all about the survivor's guilt that accompanies it. And I have really, for the most part, stopped talking about it. Once I was cancer free, again, I felt like who am I to talk about this? It was such a short span of time, uh, such a short recovery. It felt long to me because it was a month where I couldn't walk. But in the whole scheme of things, so short. And I'm so blessed.
Mhm. Yeah. I just want to take a breath with that. That was a lot. That's a lot. And the survivor's guilt is real.
Hmm.
That is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you teach women to become aware of patterns shaping their relationships. What patterns did you discover in yourself that were the hardest to face?
So I discovered patterns of codependency and seeing how I essentially attached my identity to my husband, my job, my children. And in doing so, I completely lost that connection with myself. I ended up during that separation not knowing who I was, what I wanted, what made me happy. And the label of codependency, it was kind of funny. I was going to therapy, and my therapist said, have you ever, looked into codependency? I'm like, no, I mean, that's not me. That's people that are with an addict or, whatever. That's not me. And he's like, well, um, I've noticed that even your email addresses show that your identity is tied in something other than you. Um, I was Mrs. J. Willard at gmail.com.
Oh my goodness.
And prior to that, I was BTS mom 30, like it was like my kid, I was mom, I was wife. And my identity was so tied into those things. And so learning about codependency and seeing, it wasn't, I wouldn't go so far as to say that it was, I don't know, like hard to face. It really was eye-opening to me. Like I finally had a name for what I was experiencing, and knowing that I wasn't alone in that was really so helpful. So yeah, I ended up even, going to support groups and everything to understand more about codependency and how I could, you know, find my identity outside of those other things and be okay even when, you know, other people were not.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think, how often should we be celebrating our awarenesses? Because sometimes we have these awarenesses and we're like, oh my gosh, how did I not see that? How could I have lived up until this time and have not even seen that? And when I learned that awareness actually grows the prefrontal cortex, I mean, I thought, well, that's why children play, right? That's why we teach children. That's why we go to school. That's why we read books, because it creates these awarenesses of something bigger than outside of ourselves. Do you have anything
Yeah.
to say about that? Just celebrating our awarenesses. Like, could you celebrate that at that time?
Um, I had mixed feelings about it, really. Yeah, there was, like I said, I liked having a name for it because prior to that, what I did notice about myself before, but I would shame myself for it, was I would always, from the time I was, I don't know, in middle school, go from one relationship to another. I always had to be in a relationship. Now, in hindsight, I'm able to see how I was influenced not only by my culture, but even by my family. My grandparents lived like 6 hours away from us, and every single time I got on the phone with my grandma or visited my grandma, from the time I'm not kidding you, from the time I was 6 years old, she would say, "Do you have a boyfriend?"
Ooh, yes.
And I didn't realize how much I was impacted by that. That was an expectation. Oh, I'm supposed to have a boyfriend. And so, by golly, I made sure I always did.
Yes.
So I saw that, but I didn't realize how that was impacting me and my own emotional health and growth because I was just attaching my identity to being somebody's girlfriend, to being somebody's wife, and then to being somebody's mom. It was in those relationships that I formed my identity.
Yeah, without the knowledge of even how to be in relationship, right? There's
Absolutely.
there's nothing we're not talking about those things, and that's the beauty of what you do is bringing that into light to be able to talk about those things like how are you in relationship
Mhm.
with yourself, with others, and what is the impact that you are having in that relationship, in the world, and with yourself.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and like you said, I mean, we're never taught that. We're not There should be a class in high school, in college, where we're taught what because we don't even know what a healthy relationship looks like. We grow up on fairy tales and Disney movies that basically tell us that once we get married, we'll live happily ever after. And
Right.
and they don't tell us what unhealthy looks like. And so, going back to the story that I shared about, my daughter, I didn't realize I didn't even realize I was in an emotionally abusive marriage until I was able to witness it and went, wait a minute, that's not right. But, and then it was honestly, this is even embarrassing to share, but also why I'm so passionate about what I do on social media is there were posts on social media that helped open my eyes to the fact that I was in an emotionally abusive marriage. I was not able to identify that on my own, probably because I grew up with an emotionally abusive father. And so that was normal. So
Well,
what
and
we grow
also,
up with is
yes.
what we think is normal. And then that's also what we attract in our lives because we think I mean, that's what I'm worthy of. That's how people who love me treat me.
Yes. And also with the suppression of emotion. Don't cry, don't, suck it up, which I'm part of that generation. I pass that down even to my children's generation. And I have grandchildren now to where I'm breaking that pattern. I'm actually
Yes.
breaking that pattern. Now, is it difficult? Yeah, it's really difficult to watch somebody have these emotional breakdowns and know what to do when you had to go to your room and be quiet, or I'm going to even spank you. Those types of things were in my life. So it's like, we have this nervous system with all of this too. And so sometimes, yeah, the awareness isn't there because we've been shut down in so many areas of our life.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
I just want to speak to that a little bit. So while I coach others, I continue to get coached myself. And just last week, uh, I was talking to my coach who is also a therapist, and we were talking about just the idea of numbing our emotions and just what you were saying, about growing up in a family where we were told, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. And it was just interesting because and this is also something that I do with my clients as well when we have a difficult emotion or struggling with something to ask yourself, when is the first time you remember feeling this way?
Mm.
Or, when did you first learn? When did you first learn that you needed to numb your emotions or not express your emotions? And wow, she walked me through something that was just so incredibly powerful. I didn't even realize, she was asking me, when did you first learn that? And I said, I have so many memories, not any distinct individual memories of my dad saying, stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. But the the memory that came up to me while she was coaching me was when I was in high school and my dad found out that I was on birth control pills. And I distinctly remember what I was wearing that day. And the reason I remember that is because my face was downcast and my tears soaked the front of my shirt. I don't know how long this episode lasted, but my dad, was berating me, what I was telling her is I said, I know it lasted a long time because I remember my shirt was soaked. And I know he's just, berating me, so disappointed in me. But I don't remember a single thing he said. And she then explained, that was your body trying to protect you from that abuse. It was almost like it was an out of body experience. You kind of shut down, not able to fully hear it. But unfortunately, like your subconscious mind still heard all of those words, still processed all of that. And then that pain still lives in you. So yeah, it's an ongoing, or should be an ongoing, journey for all of us in this space to continue healing those parts of us and bringing those to the surface so that we can heal.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So, why do you think that so many women will fight for their relationships with others, but abandon the relationship within themselves? Because we talked a little bit about that in the beginning.
Yeah. And I think that for two reasons. One, because women have a tendency to attach their identity to their relationships, just like I shared. But I think the other part of that is that we're conditioned to believe that having a relationship with ourselves or loving ourselves is selfish. So then we ignore that part of us and we just serve others, pour into other people, and adopt that same belief that others have put into us, that doing for yourself or loving yourself is selfish. So I think that it's kind of that combination there.
Well, and I'm curious too, because what just came to my mind is that really is a form of manipulation, isn't it? When somebody says that you're being selfish for not thinking of me, right? Because that's really what it boils down to
Right, right.
is, oh, you're thinking of yourself.
Hmm.
No, you need to be thinking of me.
Yeah,
So yeah, that is so interesting as well.
yeah. And I think that we can get that not only from our relationships, but also from, if you have any type of church background, like I got that message in church, I am to serve others. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with serving others. The problem is we often serve out of this like emptiness. We serve sometimes in hopes of being loved, or in hopes of being needed. And that is also a kind of a form of manipulation and control, so it can be kind of messed up. But I have just come to believe and see for myself that I serve others the best when it comes from an overflow of love, not in that, well, I should be doing this, or
Yes.
I'm doing this because it's expected of me. It's an obligation. But no, I'm doing this because I love you and because I have so much love in me and I want to pour that onto you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's also the martyrism where, don't you see all that I do? And that's part of
Yes,
that victim mentality of now you have to love me because don't you see all that I do? And so,
exactly.
yeah, there are these interesting things that are interwoven in, and they're not meant to be that way. But depending on, everybody has that level of health. Sometimes we're not always matched up with a healthy parent. And so
Hmm.
it does turn more into manipulation. And we don't see it as children either. And we can spend years and years and years doing the same thing until it doesn't work for us anymore, right?
Right.
Like when you
Yeah.
sat there and you realize like this is not working anymore. This
Hmm.
is not working anymore.
Yeah.
And then
And
you
I just want to say one more thing about that is that so I believe that the opposite of love is not hate, but fear. We are always either leading in love or we are leading in fear. And, I can even recognize that in that situation that I shared about my dad, he didn't hate me. He was afraid that I was going to make some terrible mistakes. That I was going to, I mean, like my dad ended up a father when he was a senior in high school with me, right? So he was acting out of fear because he didn't want to see his daughter making the same mistakes that he did. And I can recognize that. Still, does not condone what he did, and it still does not ease the pain that I felt. But I'm able to recognize that he was leading with fear. And we as women have that tendency to do that as ourselves. Well, if I do this, then he'll love me. Then he'll never leave me. That's leading with fear. That's not leading out of love. And when we lead with fear, we're actually leading with control and manipulation. And we're not meaning to, that's not our intention, but the impact will be felt.
It's a shield. It's a shield to vulnerability as well. And when our emotions have been shut down, we don't know how to be vulnerable. We don't even have the language to express in a healthy way what it is that we're saying. And how different would it have been if your dad sat down with you and said, "Hey, um, let me tell you my story, right?
Mhm.
And I want to make sure that and honestly, birth control could have been a very good thing. Hey, I'm happy to see that because you're most likely not going to end up in a situation like I was. But it takes that vulnerability and that compassion and that true knowing of ourselves to open up and be vulnerable, right? We cannot
Yeah.
heal a relationship. I mean, and I love where you come at this direction. It has to start with the relationship within ourselves. It
Mhm.
has to, because if we don't have compassion for ourselves, if we are not leading in fear, and we have a language to where we can express what it is that we need to express in a healthy way because we want to be in relationship, then the outcome is going to be so much different than if we lead from that fear place from what you just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback off what you were saying, with the walls, I always tell my clients, these walls, we build these walls around our hearts to protect ourselves from pain, which is understandable. What we don't realize is that those walls also prevent us from experiencing joy and love and intimacy.
I
So the
agree.
very things that we think are going to protect us from all of the emotions, good and bad.
I agree with that too. And I've recently been working within myself of the spectrum of joy and the spectrum of sorrow because I've had a lot of sorrow recently, some really deep things that have been very, very sorrowful to me. But what I recognize is that I can actually have a larger spectrum on joy. And sometimes the joy brings out the tears more than the sorrow because I am still shut down in some ways because I wasn't allowed to be angry or have, these emotions. I was shut down. And so sometimes that joy is the pathway to bring out those tears. And I even say, wow, I was so joyous. I had tears today. I know it healed something. I don't know what it was, but I know that it healed something. in that sorrow category.
Yeah.
And so there's a spectrum that starts to arrive when we are able to drop down those defenses and bring in that compassion, not only for ourselves, but for others as well. And finding that compassion to someone that has hurt us, that can be very difficult.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I'm looking at my notes here. So, when a woman becomes deeply self-aware, how does it change the dynamic of every relationship around her? And I kind of talked a little bit about the spectrum, but I want to hear your point of view on that.
Yeah, and so I think that it depends on how she goes about that self-awareness. Like if she is focused on labeling herself or even resigning to the, well, that's just the way I am, neither of those are healthy. Or if she's shaming herself, that's not healthy. But if she's able to approach that awareness with compassion, like we've been talking about, and also curiosity, like I wonder where that came from. When was the first time I remember feeling that way? When did I learn that? Who taught me that? You know, when we're able to come at awareness in that way, that allows us to have um, an understanding that our unhealthy tendencies were likely from unmet needs and unhealed wounds from our past. I like to share the example that if somebody were lost in the woods and they had been lost for a couple days, they didn't have anything to eat or drink, we would not fault them for drinking really muddy water or eating some really disgusting things, right? Because their need for food and water was not getting met. And sometimes, our need to be seen, heard, understood, loved, touched, all of these things were not met in a healthy way with clean water and nutritious food, right? So then we resorted to finding a substitute for that. And when we can, and we can have compassion for the man or woman who's lost in the woods, but then we don't have compassion for ourselves. But I think that if we can think of ourselves like somebody who was lost in the woods, doing the best they know how, that helps bring compassion in to all of the younger versions of ourselves that were doing the best we knew how. Even yesterday's version, we're learning, we're growing, we're healing, and just bringing in that compassion will also allow us to have more compassion for those around us. I wish that I had done this work when my children were younger because I was a very similar parent to the way that I was parented because that's all I knew. And now that I know something different, now that I know the power of compassion, fortunately, I get a second shot. I just had my first grandson born 2 months ago, and it's just so exciting to me that wow, like I can show him, and I can show my daughters now that they're adults. I just wish that I wish I would have been where I am now when they were younger because I see how that relationship with myself impacted it then and in not in a good way because I did not have a strong relationship with myself. I was not connected to who I was. My identity came from or if they're being good, well then that means I am a good mom.
Yeah, we were in survival. I was in the
Mhm.
same boat, exact same boat. And boy, I tell you, I am so grateful that I get to eat crow. I'm so grateful every time because I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that. No way. I'm finding that new way to show up differently. Is it difficult? Oh yeah, it's pushing my boundaries and it's changing myself in the process. And it does bring in those new awarenesses of, oh wow, um, what really did happen to me? And also being able to apologize to my children, to be able to
Absolutely.
show them that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have not done it right. Like we're all trying the best that we can. But when we're in survival mode, like you said, I've never heard that analogy, and I think it is one of the most beautiful things. I think I've healed a few things within myself just hearing that from you today. And also, I love that you had brought it out to where you can give other people grace when you can see that they're not there. You know, they either they don't want to be or they're not ready or whatever it is. And it takes away the like, why can't they? Or why aren't they? Or it takes away the judgment of
Yes.
others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, congratulations. So fun. So fun. So our summit theme is overcoming. In your experience, what is harder for women to overcome? The pain from others or the beliefs they formed about themselves because of it?
Absolutely 100% the beliefs that they formed. In fact, I have I usually give this demonstration of a tree. Okay. So uh, the roots are our experiences in early childhood, the experiences that developed, who we are and the beliefs that we created as a result of those experiences. So then the beliefs are like this sturdy trunk that supports everything else. And then from that trunk come the branches, our thoughts and feelings, and then the leaves and the fruit, which is the things that we say and the things that we do, right? So um this trunk determines everything else. We can recreate our experiences. When I think back to the experience that I shared with you, I can I can reparent myself even in those moments. I can go back to that hurting teenage girl who felt like she had disappointed her father. And I can comfort her and say, "You know what? Honey, you were just getting love in the only way you knew how." And that makes sense. And loving on her and recreating that experience in my mind, making new neural pathways in my brain. The experiences don't have to define us. But then when we can reparent ourselves and bring in new experiences, then we can create new beliefs. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of healthy love. It doesn't matter what my dad said to me about who I was as a teenage girl having sex. That does not determine who I am and the love I can give and the type of parent I can be and the type of grandparent I can be. So it's those beliefs, absolutely, that are going to have the biggest impact. And so many of those beliefs live in our subconscious mind. But if you are in an unhealthy relationship, I guarantee you there's some beliefs under the surface that have caused you to believe that that's what you're worthy of. So when we can change the beliefs, we change how we show up. When we change how we show up, we change how others treat us as well, because we are teaching others how to treat us by the way we treat ourselves. And we treat ourselves how we believe we deserve to be treated.
And it completely breaks that change of codependency.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it's like the people pleaser goes away because it's truth now. This is truth. This is not asking for more than you deserve. It isn't having to be accepted from what they think of me. It's your own beliefs. That trunk of that tree, right?
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. So I have one more question, Michelle.
Yeah.
Looking back on everything that this journey has taught you, what truth about a woman's relationship with herself do you hope that every woman listening today understands?
I would say the two C's:
Okay.
compassion and curiosity. I believe that those are keys to our healing and our growth and our relationship with ourselves and everyone else.
Perfect. And if somebody wanted to find you, how could they find you?
Well, I have a presence on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook under Heart, Mind, Soul Coach. And yeah, and so all of those, there's, link in my bio on each of those. I have regular workshops for women who are struggling in these areas inside of their relationships. And I've got one coming up in a couple weeks, and you can check out all of that in the link in my bio on any of those social platforms.
And I'll be sure to put any links that you would like me to put underneath this video so that anyone watching can find you easily.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being part of this summit, and thanks everyone for watching.